What's up, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Chicago Football Show. I'm Scott Bair alongside Carmen Vitali, and boy, do we have things to talk about. That's because on Tuesday afternoon, the Bears released their 53-man roster, their initial one, cutting it down from 90 people on Tuesday, and this will be the essentially basic structure of who they could carry into a week one Monday Night Football contest against the Minnesota Vikings. A quick couple things off the top. We've seen Travis Homer and also Eamon Ogbongbemiga, I hope I said that right, headed to injured reserve. There weren't a lot of surprise cuts necessarily, Carmen. There are 6 wide receivers: Jahdae Walker, an undrafted free agent, in the wide receiver room, Carl Jones, a linebacker, another young guy that made it. Theo Benedict made the roster. There are a lot of kind of young talents that are coming into their own that made it. Jaylon Johnson back on the active roster. I'm going to kind of give you free reign to go wherever you want to go. What was your overall takeaway from this roster? Does it look like it's competitive?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely does. And Brian Poles actually touched on that when he spoke today at the podium, where he was like, listen, it gets harder and harder, the more competitive the roster is. And that's a good problem to have. He's not starting from a place that he was a few years ago, where he was making waiver claim after waiver claim at this stage of the game. He's not going to be doing that. He said, this is not a roster that you end up claiming 6 guys, to join it at this stage of the game. So like you said, Scott, there weren't too many surprises. The biggest thing that stuck with me from today was when we talked to Ben Johnson earlier before practice. He was very hesitant to tell us anything about or talk about starters for week 1 in Minnesota. He said at this stage, he's still very much Bears oriented. It's all about us, is what he said. And he didn't want to get into who was going to start. I think it might have been a way of maybe skirting the left tackle question, because we still don't know who the starting left tackle is for sure. That has not been announced. Ben Johnson was reluctant to say that anybody had won it outright, which is what he talked about wanting to see all throughout camp, was someone kind of going out there, taking the bull by the horns and winning that job. It doesn't sound like that's happened so far, but we don't know exactly who is going to be out there week 1 against the Minnesota Vikings on Monday Night Football.
Well, then let's just dive right into that right now, Carmen, because it's an interesting – the offensive line is an interesting position group as a whole. They have, 1, 2, 3, 4 – they have 5 technically offensive tackles in a 10-man group. That's a lot, maybe more than normal. And what they're looking at is Braxton Jones on the left side, Darnell Wright on the right side. And we heard Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles say that second-round pick Ozzy Trapillo is kind of fallen behind. He hit that rookie wall, and they decided to kind of send him back to his more natural right tackle spot. That leaves Jones and Theo Benedict on the left, and then you have Amagaji, who is going to start working at guard, at tackle, and both sides of the line, and he won't be as involved in that kind of offensive tackle conversation. Another factor that I think Ryan Poles brought up that is really interesting is you're constantly comparing Braxton Jones and what they're seeing right now upon his return from major ankle surgery that ended last year for him to what he was before the injury. I don't know if he's there yet. And I think that because we're just seeing some inconsistencies there. So Ben Johnson, I think, is going to leave this thing open as long as humanly possible, despite the fact that we've seen Braxton Jones occupy the first unit in the last 2 games, working with the starters, and at practices in between. I think 2 things. I think he wants to keep pushing Braxton. And do you think this, though, that they've gone this far with all these tackles? Is there a possibility they go look on the street or on the waiver wire and add another tackle to this mix? Is that a possibility, or do you think they stick with what they have?
I mean, I think I would have said it wasn't a possibility had they kind of made a decision, or more of a decision, up until this point, where you had 5 guys working together consistently. You knew what who those starting 5 were, and they had started to gel. You obviously don't want to upend that kind of continuity and that kind of chemistry. You want these guys to go into the season having played as many snaps as possible together, because these are 5 guys that have to work as one on the offensive line. But since that hasn't really been the case, and because no one has outright won this job yet, I absolutely think that the door is open for that. Ryan Poles has never been shy whatever position group it is by saying, you know, we are always looking to improve. We are always poking around and seeing what's out there. This is the time to do it when all these guys are kind of getting cut off waivers. It still would be a steep task by anybody coming in at this stage of the game trying to assimilate into that left tackle spot, which obviously is very crucial along this offensive line. But I think another interesting thing that Ben Johnson said was that they aren't afraid to make a move after the season starts, whether that's week 3, week 4, at the bye, week 5. That gives you kind of a natural point to maybe make a change at left tackle or wherever along the offensive line. And if someone like Ozzie Trapillo gets a little bit more comfortable now that he was back in his natural spot, maybe they try and ramp him back up at that left tackle spot again, which is where they tried to start him at camp. I'm very interested to see how this goes, because Ryan Poles also said this is one of the units that, you know, he did the most work on. He was most proud of the work that his staff did. And it's true. I mean, when you talk about getting Joe Thuney, you know, 4-time Super Bowl champion Joe Thuney, you got Drew Dahlman, a veteran center, someone with a very high football IQ. When you got Jonah Jackson, who has worked with Ben Johnson before and understands the scheme and what they're trying to do as a unit, that all is great and wonderful. And it's being overshadowed by the fact that we still don't know who the Bears left tackle is, who is protecting Caleb Williams' blindside.
We have absolutely no idea who's going to tote the rock after feature back DeAndre Swift either, Carmen. There's only 3 running backs on the active roster right now. That's low by any metric. And actually, at practice today, you and I were both there. DeAndre Swift was the only running back healthy at practice today. They were having assistants take care of certain reps.
He got a personal training session from Eric Bieniemy today.
Which can be intense. I could imagine that being like the most hard-nosed personal trainer making you do 50 extra push-ups even though you're already gassed. I want to stick on the running backs here, Carmen, because you and I talked about this and you pointed it out. Ryan Poles was asked about the running back position, about guys that may be coming back or they feel confident to be able to be healthy enough to contribute in week 1. He talked a lot about Monangai, right? And he had a lot of compliments: contact balance, his quick feet, his eyes, attention to detail. We haven't heard a lot of anything about Roschon Johnson, not only from Poles in this recent press conference, but at any point during camp. Those questions have kind of been dodged a little bit. I don't know where he stands with this staff, and I've been around this staff and Roschon and watched him practice a lot. I still don't know where he fits exactly, which makes for an interesting running back dynamic here. Are they going to give Swift the ball 270 times? Is Kyle, as a rookie out of Rutgers, going to play that much? The running back position to me is very unsettled.
I agree. It absolutely is. And I do think that there has to be some type of running back by committee plan with these guys, because if you do look at the skill sets of DeAndre Swift, of Kyle Monangai, even Roschon Johnson, they are all complementary to each other. But I agree with you, Scott. It's been very strange to just not hear much about Roschon, especially as a guy that, you know, people were excited about last year, year before. I'm not exactly sure what to make of that. Is it just as simple as, hey, Ben's still getting to know him? This was not his guy. This was not a guy that he brought in or drafted. Maybe that's the case. It's not unheard of, though, you know, for a 7th round running back to get some significant time. And I can think of a team that the Chicago Bears just played who happened to be deploying a 7th round running back to some pretty good results in Isaiah Pacheco and the Kansas City Chiefs. Right. Which is where Ryan Poles came from, by the way. So I don't know if there's some common philosophies there about where you can get these backs. I think the biggest thing with this conversation, though, does go back to the offensive line, and that kind of aids in the trust that they have in the offensive backfield, because you have a line that should now be able to run block a little bit better, even though the Bears were not bad at that last year. If you look kind of at some of the advanced metrics and where they stood in the run blocking game, they were top half in the league most games, at least according to some PFF metrics that I was looking at last year. That's something that I think is going to be huge, though, is opening up those rushing lanes for some of these guys to make things easier on DeAndre Swift if he is indeed the bell cow, Or are you going to turn to somebody like Kyle Monangai, who is built a little like stouter, I want to say, and can run between the tackles? That's kind of the profile that Roshan Johnson occupies as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it ends up shaking out and who's just available week one. It sounds like we're going to get some clarity on that within the coming days, according to what Ryan Poles said today, that we should expect to see some of those backs back out there over the next few practices. But I'm very interested because the running game is so crucial to what Ben Johnson wants to do offensively that I'm sure they have a plan.
Yeah, and to stick with the skill players here, the wide receivers, I always thought that they were going to take five. I mentioned it on this show and on MarqueeSportsNetwork.com because five seemed like a good number considering that tight ends Cole Kmet and Colston Levelin can line up out wider in the slot. So you kind of have like seven wide receivers anyway. They kept a sixth. They kept Jahdae Walker. And if you happen to stay up late on Friday night, I know there's a lot of sick Bears fans out there watching the fourth quarter of the last preseason game. You saw the undrafted kid out of Texas A&M do some pretty special things. The game-winning touchdown was really nice. The tackle on special teams to secure the victory. But also there was a catch that he toe-tapped that Antoine Randall L., you saw the photo, dropped his jaw and kind of – and you always wonder, fans always wonder, did he make it based upon the Kansas City game? Well, probably not, right? And he's shown well in other games, but you see an undrafted player. To be honest with you, I wasn't sure if there was going to be a single undrafted player on this roster. Here we have two, Jones and Walker. What's your take on Walker making it and them creating a spot for him where they necessarily didn't have to have one? Oh, and by the way, they had to let go of Tyler Scott just to give it to him.
Yeah, and that says a lot, honestly, because Tyler Scott was a draft pick and Jahdae Walker wasn't. By the way, another undrafted guy, Tyson Bagent, just got an extension last week as well. So Ryan Poles not afraid to go looking for those guys. But I think that what Ryan Poles said today made a lot of sense in the sense of it, not only Jahdae Walker, but guys like Theo Benedict, where they went from entering camp in such a developmental stage to surpassing any and all expectations. It sounds like this coaching staff and this front office staff had for them, and they took notice. So while the decision wasn't probably based just on the Kansas City game and some of those, highlight worthy plays, a lot of it was a benchmark to showing how far these guys have come in just such a short amount of time. And things like the Jahdae Walker catch where he is toe tapping on the sideline, he does understand his leverage. He knows how to play off of the defensive back and where to put his hands and to make sure that that's a completion. Those are things that you should not take for granted when it comes to these young players. It takes guys a long time to learn stuff like that. And so to have them be that far along, especially coming out as an undrafted guy, it's just extremely impressive. And that's the kind of guy that you choose to bet on. And that's what the Bears did by letting go of Tyler Scott in favor of someone like Jahdae Walker.
And the tough part is I think Tyler Scott had a pretty good camp, to be honest with you. He showed up well in joint practices, generally working with the third unit along with Walker. I never saw Walker surge up to play with the ones very often, outside of a couple examples that are now, of course, popping into my head. But it wasn't like he was a first teamer all of a sudden. This is a guy that was down kind of there, and you just wonder, could they get him through waivers? The other side of it is that Tyler Scott has a lot of tape already. So maybe they feel like they know what his flaws are. They know what his ceiling is. I wouldn't be surprised if Tyler Scott went somewhere else, found a role for himself, both on offense and special teams. Quick guy, good dude, smart guy, I think could definitely fit in somewhere else. Now, maybe this isn't a surprise, quote unquote, Carm, but when you look at the quarterbacks, especially the way Tyson Bagent played over the second half of training camp, there was at least part of me that said, yeah, I think the Bears could get away with two, right? That they could probably get away with Caleb Williams and Tyson Bagent, considering Tyson Bagent's scheme knowledge, the fact that he performed so well. I think he's the backup quarterback. I feel like that's pretty safe to say. But Ben Johnson came out before the roster was even announced and said, hey, look, we are keeping three quarterbacks. And I feel like that speaks to Case Keenum's value at this point, even if he might not be the number two.
Yeah, I mean, think about why Case Keenum was brought here. With all of the experience he has, it was to be that bridge between this coaching staff and the players themselves. Having a guy like that in the quarterback meeting rooms is really invaluable. And you add on to the fact that you have JT Barrett and coaching quarterbacks too, a former quarterback himself. I mean, this is just a really football IQ rich room. These are guys that have a lot of experience at playing the position, and that can only help when you have a young developing quarterback like Caleb Williams, like Tyson Bagent for that matter, trying to build their foundation in the league and then, expand it. And these are kind of situations where you can impart some knowledge and some experience so that they do know what to expect when they go out there on Sunday or Monday, for that matter, or Thursday, or whenever they're going out there. It's one of those things where having the mental reps with a guy that's done it and been there before is really, that's why Case Keenum was brought here. That's why Ben Johnson likes him so much. That's why Ben Johnson trusts him so much. So while I agree with you where I think that Tyson Bagent is the backup quarterback here, given his skill set, given how much he just really grinds into the playbook, I do think that Case Keenum could be used as a spot guy where, it's one of those situations where it's just not favorable for anybody to go in the game at that point. And maybe you do throw Case Keenum out there because of the fact that he has all of that experience. And then, if it's a prolonged injury, God forbid, that's when you get Tyson Bagent a little bit more ramped up. But I think having the versatility of having both of those guys in that room for so many different reasons is such a good thing. And I feel like Ben Johnson knows what he's doing, trying to develop quarterbacks.
We're taking that really day to day. When I was going out to practice, he was running and doing agility work. So I feel like he's getting better. When you're going from not playing and just training to football, there's all kinds of different things that kind of change timelines. So we're hopeful that he continues to get better. We also have to be smart to make sure he's good long term as well. So we'll just take that day by day and really work through our medical staff to make sure we're doing right by Jaylon.
Welcome back to the Chicago Football Show. That was General Manager Ryan Poles that you just heard from, talking about all-pro cornerback Jaylon Johnson, a guy that we haven't seen on the practice field throughout camp. He's been dealing with a He's dealing with a hamstring injury, if I can get that right, that he suffered when he was training to get ready for training camp. We haven't seen him at practice. He was on the non-football injury list. He has now been placed on the active roster, which gets him revved up for the regular season. But Carmen, if we listen to Ryan there, I don't think it's a guarantee that he plays week one. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but I think it's still up in the air.
I mean, between what Ryan Poles and what Ben Johnson said, it does sound like they are expecting him to be ready for week one. That is what they are planning for. That is what they are pushing for, as Ryan Poles said it. But of course, especially with soft tissue injuries, which is what Jaylon Johnson has, those things can linger. They want to be smart. They want to be safe with the guy that is their all-pro corner. He's the leader of that defense. You want to make sure that you do not rush him back with something like that, especially if he is going to be tasked with locking down Justin Jefferson in week one. That's not an easy feat. So do you want to throw him out there and maybe risk re-aggravating that injury? That's the kind of tightrope that they have to walk. But does he also give you the best chance of locking down Justin Jefferson? Yeah, he does. So this is what the coaching staff is trying to figure out. According to Ryan Poles, Jaylon Johnson was doing some running today. He did some more agility stuff. So they are ramping him up and trying to get him ready for week one, which is the expectation that he will be out there. And we're all hoping that's the case as well. I know that Bears defense, which, they've been banged up now in that secondary throughout this camp. And this is a unit that has not gotten to play together at all because Jaylon Johnson hasn't really been out there. And that's something that Ryan Poles touched on as well when he was talking about, hey, was there a unit maybe that he didn't foresee, like not being as good as he wanted it to be, or just being in a place where he didn't like it as much? And he pointed to the secondary saying, listen, these guys haven't had the chance to be out there all together and be in Dennis Allen's new scheme on top of that. So that's what is going to be, there's going to be a learning curve there when the season gets going here. And you hope that Jaylon Johnson can get back in there as soon as possible, not only for what he can do on the field, but the leadership that he brings and the energy that he brings to the secondary.
The Bears have really operated a fair amount of this training camp without Jaylon Johnson or Kyler Gordon, which has given a ton of and let me offer this piece of info. Kyler Gordon has been ramping back up to practice.
Yes.
On Tuesday, he was out there a considerable amount in a non-padded practice. He's moving in the right direction. That said, a lot of first-team reps have gone to guys that you may not have heard of before July 23rd that now you have. Nashawn Wright and Nick McLeod, guys who have been playing significant roles in the second half of this training camp and have frankly proved themselves to such an extent that they weren't even considered bubble players coming in. It wasn't like, will they or won't they make it? It's like they're going to make it because they've earned their spot. And that's how this position group has been able to weather being without Gordon for a period, being without Johnson for all of camp. Josh Blackwell, the backup slot corner, has dealt with some injuries as well. So there's been a lot of things going on. And in addition to Terrell Smith being done for the year with a knee injury, my goodness gracious, as this position group really had it handed to them. But they found a way, and I wouldn't consider that a team weakness. I think that they found a way to kind of weather that storm, and some guys have emerged who are Dennis Allen types, 6 foot plus guys who can press and guys who can play physical up front.
Yeah, I mean, that's the story of Nashawn Wright, right? I mean, he is that prototypical outside corner guy. He's big, he's long, he's got reach. And that's exactly what you need to play in Dennis Allen's scheme, which is a lot more man coverage. You're going to be have to lock down your guy, and you're going to need all the leverage possible to do that. And the easiest way to do that is size. And that's why you hear Dennis Allen talk about size and length so incredibly much, because it matters. It matters a lot when you're talking about the kind of scheme that he wants to run. So it seems like, I feel like I look across the league all the time, and that, I mean, this is what happened back in Detroit last year, in Ben Johnson's last year with Detroit. Their secondary just got bit by the injury bug, and that ended up being their Achilles heel. That's happened, time and time again. You almost can't have enough depth at those corner and safety positions. And that's what I think the Bears are trying to do. And I think if you're looking for a silver lining in all of this, is that when you do get your starters back, when you do get Jaylon back, and you make sure that Kyler Gordon's back and all those guys are out there together, well, now you also have backups that have played a lot of snaps when it comes to the preseason and the training camp. They've gotten a lot of experience executing this scheme. And so the drop-off shouldn't be as steep should one of those guys in the starting roles have to come out at any point during a game.
And just one little kind of piece of news and notes: Zay Frazier, who has been unavailable due to personal reasons. General Manager Ryan Poles said that he was not going to play all season long. The Bears did find the root of what was considered a personal issue. They are going to support him throughout the course of the year and give him another fresh start coming up next summer. I think that's admirable of the team, and we all obviously are hoping that the defensive back out of Texas San Antonio can contribute on into the future. Carmen, we only have a couple minutes left in show here. Let's kind of pull the microscope back. Let's go back to 30,000 feet here. That you and I have been at so many practices over the course of training camp, and this is a real transition point, right? Next week is a game week. What's your opinion of Ben Johnson's body of work, this team's body of work, as they get ready for week one? It hasn't always been great. At times it's been really good. I don't know what you think about kind of where their readiness is with less than 2 weeks to go before they play the Vikings.
I mean, you heard Ryan Poles say it in his press conference today, just about the relationship between Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, and how that has had its share of ups and downs this camp. And that's to be expected when you have a new coach coming in with a drastically different scheme, a drastically different way of developing quarterbacks, of wanting to, I mean, everything about Caleb Williams' game so far that we've seen in the league has essentially changed under Ben Johnson. He's changed his footwork. He's changed some of his throwing styles, his throwing windows. He's had to be a lot more anticipatory when you're talking about when he's throwing the ball and having to let it go and making decisions quicker. And Ben Johnson has not been shy about telling all of us that they put a lot on Caleb's plate. They put a lot on this offense's plate in general, and it was meant to overload them and to see them kind of wade through everything and face that adversity early, because as Ryan Poles said today too, that is going to help his development. And that's the way Caleb wants it. He wanted to have to go through something in training camp because it's only going to aid him down the line as he continues to develop in this scheme under Ben Johnson. So yeah, I mean, it's been wildly inconsistent, but I think that that's to be expected. And I keep kind of preaching patience when it comes to this team, and that if it doesn't look good right away, that doesn't mean it won't look good down the line. This is what the Bears are asking their players to do right now. What Ben is asking his players to do is no small feat, and it's going to take some time to really gel. And I think that the coaching staff has really good expectations of the players. I think the front office has really good expectations for the coaching staff and the players, and they understand the timeline that they're on. And I think that they are comfortable with it not looking as great to start out with if it doesn't. So I ask that of Bears fans as well, is just to don't panic if it doesn't look great to start out.
Yeah, I think we hear so much about what Ben Johnson talked about as a race to week one. It's not a race to cross a finish line. It's a race to get a construction project completed. They needed to get the cinder block and the concrete in. They needed to build the stable foundation. So when they embark on this regular season, they have solid footing. They can fall back to their training with all the pressure and all of the physicality. So when they get tired or adversity hits, they are not going to sink in a way that we saw last year. So again, don't think about this as the race to week run, cross the finish, everybody hand the runner some roses, right? This is about the foundation. And I think now that they're there, we can see if they can take off and how quickly that they can. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks leading up to it. And as always, the Chicago Football Show will be there with you every single step of the way, every single week. Carmen and I will have this little therapy session with you on during the course of the practice week. We are looking forward to it. And the best way that you know when every episode is coming, I've already told it to you. Subscribe. YouTube, Amazon Music, Spotify, the Watch Marquee app, you name it. We're global, man. If you hit one of those buttons, you're guaranteed to get every Chicago Football Show right to your phone. Guaranteed, lock, stock. And I'm going to stop talking now, and we're going to get out to it. Next time we will come to you. Carmen's going to be in Las Vegas. It's going to be awesome.
Going to Vegas, baby. I'll be there at Circa. I'll be there at Circa Stadium Swim checking in with you, Scott, next week. So look out for that. It'll be great.
Look, I can't wait to see it. And everybody will be excited for just 1 week closer to the Bears regular season.